Welcome back. In the prior unit, we showed off how we were able to completely liquidate a user by trading their collateral to cover their debt and wipe out the user's loan. What would happen if we just want to partially run that process? Welcome to the world of partial liquidations. It's relatively straightforward to imagine the cases where you would find it preferable to run a partial liquidation as opposed to a full liquidation. What if it's a whale position you're trying to liquidate, and liquidating the entire position at once would tank the market? You might get wrecked by slippage while trying to do it, but if you just liquidate them by nibbling away a little bit at a time, maybe it's not so bad. So in this case, we're going to set this up in the same way we set up the previous unit. If any of this is unfamiliar, review the past two units and it will make more sense. For now, we're just compacting the code blocks because it's the same. We're deploying a dummy oracle, creating the Llama lend vault, depositing Curve USD. The borrower comes along and creates a fairly wide-range loan of 30 bands, but this trader comes in and quickly nukes the price. The price collapses and the user finds himself underwater, and this represents the collateral, which has now been converted, if it's not there, into stablecoin. You can see they fell at this band with the price of Bitcoin around 55K, just over. And along comes a liquidator who notices this user's health is underwater. Specifically, their user state looks a bit like this. They've got just under 50K in debt, and backing it is a greater amount in dollar terms if you combine the collateral and WBTC and the portion that's been converted to Curve USD. So the WBTC is worth about 37K, the Curve USD is worth 18K. The two amounts combined cover the debt. Nothing new here. To liquidate the user 10%, first thing we look at is we see that in order to get the 31K tokens necessary to liquidate, the debt immediately subtracts out the Curve USD, but there's still a portion of the debt outstanding. In order to liquidate that fully, we would need to convert 0.327 WBTC, but this would be for a full liquidation. If we're just talking about a partial liquidation, we're going to be assigning a fraction of 10%. That is, we would like to 10% liquidate this user. So the first thing that we need to understand is the liquidation discount. We get this by calling the liquidation discount function on the relevant controller. And when you look at the actual code that happens within the controller, in order to calculate it, it is using this internal getFremove function. The getFremove function is returning back this liquidation discount. And in order to calculate it, it is running this formula, which is 1 plus h over 2, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't look so good here, so we've formatted it in LaTeX for you to see it much more easily. The important thing to note is that frac is the fraction. H represents this particular liquidation discount, and we're going to visualize what specifically it means. But when you look at the formula, you'll notice that if you're talking about no liquidation discount is applied, aka H equals 0, H can run from 0 to 100. When H is 0, this becomes 1, this becomes 1, so this whole term cancels to just be 1, so you're multiplying it times this. So inside the parentheses, it's 1 minus frac plus frac. In other words, 1. So this whole parentheses just cancels down to 1, and you're left with the amount that you're removing is exactly equal to the fraction that you're trying to remove. In other words, it's perfectly linear. You're trying to remove 10%, you get it exactly. If h is any number, then this term kicks in and provides this arc. So we plot it here so you can visualize exactly what's going on. So there's a very slight penalty, in other words. The case where h is equal to 0, the liquidation discount is 0, it would just be a straight line. The amount that you want to remove is the exact same. But the concept of liquidation discount is a very, very, very slight penalty. You can see if the liquidation discount is set to 1, this bows ever so slightly down here. So if you're trying to liquidate about half, you get hit with maybe a 10% or so penalty. It's not substantial, but you want to just encourage people to go for the complete amount liquidated or nothing at all. It has to, of course, exist here, otherwise the curve's not continuous. The math was just chosen to provide this nice continuous curve, and because it's a little bit tough to see exactly how the curve looks like on here, we do this second visualization where we are showing the liquidation discount relative to the flat case. So you can see that if h was set equal to 0, it would be completely straight across. But the liquidation discount at about 50% would be about 6%. So not substantial. It just provides a very slight penalty. And it's important because if you want to liquidate 10% at a time, you don't want to run into a situation where there could be a bonus. So you have to have the curve go down ever so slightly. So we're in a situation where there's a slight penalty for running this liquidation. What does this look like in this case? In this case, we see that you would get less collateral. You'd increase the user's health, which is another potential advantage for running a partial liquidation, is you can just partially liquidate the user and all of a sudden their health improves slightly. But in this case, when we're trying to liquidate 10% of the debt, we only get 9.84% of the collateral. So that extra bit sticks around to actually improve the user's situation. How would you actually run this partial liquidation? We're going to go ahead and run this. When we run this calculation, we've got the F remove value. We multiply that times the amount of collateral to see how much WBTC we're selling off. When we sell this off, we find out that we're indeed hitting about 9.84%, 9.85%, which is going to be 0.065 WBTC that we're selling. We then run the exchange call data and liquidate function the exact same way we ran the previous unit. The only difference is we've added this F remove function in here to only liquidate that amount that we're asking for. So we run this, we see the partial liquidation happens. Liquidator ends up getting $3,104 worth of Curve USD. And the user state previously, it was just completely wiped out. But in this case, you can see that the user state has improved ever so slightly. So all of these values have kind of dropped by a corresponding amount. So whereas before they were 18K Curve USD as collateral, 0.6639 WBTC, 49K to 50K in debt. Now they are at a smaller amount of Curve USD as collateral. So it's only taken partially from there. Smaller amount of WBTC as collateral and a smaller debt. So the partial liquidation was successful. So you could use this, you could run this on yourself to improve your health position. You can use this to take down other users ever so slightly. Partial liquidation is yet another valuable tool that you have in your tool set. So we hope, of course, if you're staying on chain, you're staying safe. We hope you're not trying to take anything but technical coding advice from this, no financial advice to be proffered. But if you do have questions, we encourage you to drop them in the comments and we'll get back to you. Take care, friends.